In this lesson, we're going to create our game's main menu. To start, we're going to create a folder called main menu. And then within there, we're going to create a UI document. We're going to call it main menu. Then we're going to double click it. And in the UI builder, we're going to drag a visual element onto the canvas, call it panel. Then we're going to adjust the width to 40% and the height to 100%. Then we're going to set the background image. So we're going to search for menu. And we're also going to set the alpha so that we can see things behind it. We're going to drag another visual element and make it a child of our panel, and we'll call that title. Then we're going to set the background image for this element. We're going to search for title. And as you can see, the default size is too large, so we're going to set the width to auto. Then we're going to set the height to 30%. And as you can see here, the image is touching the edges of our panel, so we can fix that by setting the padding on our panel. Now we're going to drag a second visual element, and we'll call this our panel dash buttons. Then we're going to set flex to grow so that it takes all the available room. Then we're going to make use of our custom control, which is a button without any styles on it. And we're going to make the text continue. We're going to adjust the font size and make it 20%. And we're going to set the font style to bold. And we're going to center the items instead of stretching them. And we want all of our elements to be on the left, so they're all going to have the same width. So we're going to set the width to 50%. We're going to call our button continue dash button. We're going to set the top margin to 10%. Then we're going to duplicate our button 4 times. And I'm going to set the top margin of the last and first button to 20%. Then we're going to rename the second button to new dash game dash button. We're also going to adjust the text to new game. We're going to change the third button name to settings button. Modify the text accordingly. We're going to repeat the process for our credits button. And finally, for the exit button. Now we're going to extract all of our styles. And so first we're going to need to create a .usss file. We're going to call it main menu. So we will extract classes for each of our elements. The buttons should all use the same button class. So you can see here it messed up the size, so we'll just readjust that to 20%. And we will add the button class to all of our buttons. We're going to open up Rider in order to create some pseudo classes for our buttons. So we're going to set the color for all of our enabled buttons. And you could think of enabled kind of as game object active. And then we're going to define the hover pseudo class, which changes the color when the mouse is over the button. And then we're also going to do it for the active pseudo class, which is basically when the button is pressed. And finally, we're going to create a pseudo class for when our button is disabled. Now we can try out our pseudo classes by clicking the preview, and as you can see, when I hover over the buttons, they change colors, and when I click them, they change colors as well. Within Unity, we're going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call it main menu. Then we're going to open it up in Rider. We're going to remove all of the boilerplate code, and we're going to grab a reference to a UI document, which will be on the same game object, and so we can just use getComponent within the awake function. Then in the onEnable function, we're going to reference the root element and query for a plain button. Because we have multiple plain buttons on our canvas, we're going to have to make sure we specify the name to differentiate between them. And then we set enabled to false because we don't have any previous saves and we don't want them to be able to click the continue button. So we're going to disable the inventory game object, and we're going to create a new game object called main menu UI. And then we're going to add our main menu mono behavior. And I realize that it's not automatically adding the UI document. So let's go ahead and specify that we require a UI document. And I don't think it's going to add it after the fact, so we're just going to have to add it manually this time around. And then we're going to select the default panel settings, and then we're going to drag the UXML file we just created. Now if we press play, we see our main menu, and I know it's a bit hard to see, but our continue button is disabled, and when we hover over the buttons, they change color as well as when we click them.